And we're back on the Zero Hour. I, as always, am your host, Richard R.J. Eskow, and I've been looking forward to speaking with my next guest about his new film, which is on a deeply painful but deeply important subject. Robert Greenwald is the founder of Brave New Films, which can be found at bravenewfilms.org. He is a director not only of the nonfiction films that can be found there, but before that, he was a director of more than 65 TV movies, miniseries, episodes, etc., and has received all sorts of awards that we won't go into. I very much respect his work. And first of all, Robert, I thank you for coming on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Sure. And this film in question that we'll talk about today is called Gaza, Journalists Under Fire. And I have to say, having now watched it in full, it's deeply powerful, it's deeply important, and I just wanted to start on a personal note in telling the story of Gaza and the attacks on journalists there, the killings of journalists there. My sense was it was impossible to detach that from the genocide overall, the killing of all civilians. They're deeply interwoven. It must have been rough, I would think, rough emotionally for you to put this movie together. Am I right about that?
Yes, very right. I felt morally committed to taking on the subject matter, even though I was warned from multiple friends, allies, and funders not to do it. But having done work on the Afghanistan war, on the Iraq war, on drones, I felt I would be a coward and a hypocrite if I did not engage on this subject. Having said that, Richard, I made the decision to focus on journalists, not that they are inherently different or better species, but my hope was that by focusing on journalists, we could reach people who maybe didn't care about the issue, who were not engaged, but who did not believe it's okay to murder journalists. I also was hoping that it would allow us to encourage traditional media to cover the story, but we've not been successful on that front. We are starting to make significant progress. We have over 500 free screenings set up all over the world, and we're continuing in that way to hopefully impact and activate people to do something.
Another aspect, of course, of another advantage focusing on journalists is that in that way you also get to tell the story of the story that isn't being told or hasn't been told, the suppression of information, which is to me so core about it. But now you've intrigued me, Robert. When you say you were warned about what exactly? About the emotional toll, about the threats to your career or your organization's funding, all of the above? What was that?
It was primarily friendly and not so friendly warnings on the funding front. And I felt that in a way was a sign we needed to do it. When we did the drones film and we were highly critical of Obama, we were told and we lost funding. But I hope we will never be one of those organizations where we exist for the reason to keep existing, rather than there's a reason, there's issues you should take on. As Amy Goodman says, go where the darkness is. And so I was motivated. And tragically, as the war has gone on, what Israel is doing has gotten worse and worse and worse. And as you said, they have cut off fundamental way for people to find out. Over 200 Palestinian journalists have been killed, and an unprecedented number, by the way, and no international journalists are allowed in unless they embed with the Israeli army.
Your comment about funding reminds me when I started criticizing the Obama administration over Wall Street and the bailouts. Being the quote I remember most was, "You picked a lonely road," but maybe we'll get back to that when we talk about the conclusion to your film. You focus on several personalities. Bilal Jadallah, who was not only a prominent journalist, but created the Press House in Palestine to support other journalists. Hiba al-Abadla, some heartbreaking footage of her with her daughter. Ismail al-Ghul, I just wanted to say their names so we think of them as we have this conversation. But one of the recurrent themes in talking about the journalists killed in Gaza is the idea that they were targeted. Some of them object to it. By the end of the film, you have footage showing people discarding reporters discarding their press vests because they feel that just makes them targets and so on. How do we know that they were targeted as journalists as opposed to just being part of the, dare I say, mass slaughter over there?
Well, I think there are a couple of ways. And to be clear, we've relied a lot on research that other organizations have done, particularly Committee to Protect Journalists and Reporters Without Borders and other really substantive, Amnesty International, the United Nations, all of whom who've done various kinds of studies. What's not in dispute is the high level number of journalists who've been killed. Depending on your facts, it's somewhere between 180 and 220. The notion of who among those are targeted, there are some differences, so that there are journalists who are killed, but the notion of looking, finding, and going after them just because they're journalists, we've relied on Committee CPJ, which is quite careful and conservative in proof, and they go through various ways that they can prove someone has been targeted. But the overall effect, Richard, is so devastating in terms of killing people, destroying families, and cutting off information. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. I think hopefully the starvation horror has broken through. But can you imagine if there was a flood of international journalists in Gaza, the stories we would be seeing and being told about starvation, or the number of hospitals? Every hospital in Gaza has been destroyed. If there were international journalists there, they would be filled with stories. That's not happening. And then so many of the Palestinian journalists, brave, courageous, have been murdered.
And one of the other things that I've been struck with, I haven't looked at the numbers in quite a long time, but after the first couple months of the attack on Gaza, I tried to compare the death rate among journalists with the death rate among the population overall. They answer the question I just asked you, but they don't provide enough data. So I guess the only other way we can think about it is the fact that they bombed and destroyed the press house, as well as killing its founder and director, says something. The fact that it was targeted, the fact that you mentioned that Ismail al-Ghul, who was a journalist with Al Jazeera, they claimed to have evidence that he had been named an officer in Hamas, but he would have been 10 years old at the time. So one of your sources tells us on camera. So I guess those also point to the idea that there's an absolute lack of credibility. Outside journalists aren't allowed in, And the journalists that are there, the Palestinians, are dying at unprecedented amounts. You have the statistics in the beginning of the film, but I think it's more than the journalists and what all U.S. wars combined, or I can't remember, but it's an enormous number.
It's an unprecedented number, and we have gotten from people who have expertise in this compared to any other wars, and then combining many wars, that it's an unprecedented number. There's no question that it's policy. It's policy to silence the truth seekers, as they are called in the film. It's policy to prevent other journalists and independent sources from coming in. So, what is the result? The result is whenever the press needs a quote, they go to the Israeli army for a quote. And we know factually there are lies, distortions, and misinformation coming from the Israeli army. And it's a tragedy. It's a terrible tragedy. And what I hope the film will do, and the reason we provide this as well as all the films for free, is so that every single person, if they choose to, can show the film. They can show it at their school, at their church, at their mosque, at their synagogue, at their workplace, wherever they want. And that's a way that people can begin to take action. You know, the first step of change is information or awareness. And that's what the film hopefully will do. I will say we've had a very, very strong reaction. I was able to attend 3 premieres in Los Angeles. I zoomed into the screening, one of the screenings in Israel. It was profoundly moving and inspirational in a good sense. The people couldn't have been more appreciative and thankful. And we know that's part of the challenge. The opinion polls in Israel have been horrific in terms of support for Gaza and killing.
And I've heard a number of people say that access to accurate information about what's happening in Gaza, even though it's literally next door, is very hard to get without enormous distortion in Israel. So that's an important accomplishment. And speaking of lies, distortion, and misinformation, you do have one clip in there of, I believe it's a State Department official saying, when confronted about the deaths of journalists, that we'll ask our partners in Israel about that. And I think one of the reporters in the press conference says, well, you've said that quite a few times over the last few months. Have they ever gotten, I think the reporter's about to say, have they ever gotten back to you? And they're cut off. So in a sense, to do a film like this, you're also swimming upstream against a fair amount of misinformation here in the US, aren't you?
Yes, a significant amount of misinformation and a desire to look away, to not look at it. This atrocity would end in a minute if we cut off the military aid that we are providing Israel. This atrocity would be put on a spotlight if the US insisted that international journalists be allowed in. None of that has happened, but it's a process. Peter Began had a very good piece in the New York Times yesterday, proving factually how much and how significant the change in the public attitudes has been. And I'm on Instagram all the time now because I get so much information, and there are courageous, extraordinary people in Gaza who are communicating that. But it's almost impossible to look at those videos and not have some sense of caring, compassion, and understanding that what's going on is an atrocity of the worst kind.
You mentioned the screening in Israel, which brings up, I think, an important aspect of both the film, even though it's certainly subtle enough, is not. But and I bring it up carefully, Robert, because I want to keep the Palestinian people and the people of Gaza at the center of this conversation, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say you may share certain biographical data points with me. I was raised Jewish at a certain time in American history. It is a journey from there to here for many generations of American Jews. And you mentioned people not wanting to confront the reality of it. I think part of the importance of a film like this is that the reality, factual and emotional, we need to all see it. We all need to, I had tears in my eyes several times with the children that have died, the children missing their parents and so on. I think that emotional information is just as important in helping some of our peers and maybe people who've grown up with the same programming, for lack of a better word, to break out of that, to confront the human issues at work here. Does that make any sense to you?
Oh, total sense. In fact, it fundamentally describes what I believe in and what we have done with this film and hopefully other films over the years, which is first you reach the heart and then the mind will follow. On our side, good friends, colleagues, smart people all too often start with a 5, 10, or 15-point PowerPoint on the hopes that the rational brain will shift people. But you must, I believe, it's no question, you need to start with the feeling. Carl Jung talks about feeling function people and thinking function people. We must start with the feeling that which then can open up the heart and the mind to the thought, to the action, and to many of the good things that we hope will follow. And that's what film can do, by the way, that a study can't do or a PowerPoint can't do. And we spend a lot of time at Brave New Films putting a face on policy, finding the people who are the spokesperson. In this particular film, because tragically the 3 journalists we're focused on have been killed, we went and spent weeks and months digging into social media to find the videos, the clips, the images, so that we could bring them alive through their social media, partly because that would engage the audience more in a responsible way, and partly because there's tremendous racism involved here. And one way to break that down, to stop the othering, to stop the distancing, is to see a child at a birthday party who was then killed. When I saw that clip, I just, immediately teared up and also knew we were on the way to being able to tell a human story that could reach people.
And that was one of the moments that got to me, too.
I wake up every day with Gaza on my mind.
What they are doing to the Gazans is a complete insult to the memory of the Holocaust.
I would like to say it and believe it, never again for any genocide.
Because we're Jews, we have to stand up and say, we totally object to this. We cry and hurt with the people of Gaza and Palestine. We cannot be silent.
I guess I'll end the way I began a little bit, posing this to you. I mentioned at the beginning that when I, like you, began criticizing the Obama administration, I was told I picked a lonely road. But one of the things that I thought was so well done in this film was that you don't end on the dispiriting note, that you end with, as heartbreaking as it is, you don't minimize the heartbreak, you end with the demonstrations around the world, the expressions of solidarity for the crowd, whether it's the celebrities or the crowds of people in the street. And to me, that is also an important part of the factual and emotional arc of this. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, because it seemed to me that that was not only a means of ending with that kind of, I hate to use this overused word, but empowerment of the viewer, but also a way to say you may feel alone in your horror about this, but there are millions of people who feel like you. Am I reading it into it, or was that part of your thought process?
Exactly the thought process, because we could make a film that would show what was going on, but therefore have people ready to throw themselves under a bus or slit their wrists, which is understandable, but not socially activating. So I struggled with it for a long time. By the way, just as I struggled, I mean, my struggle is nothing compared, obviously, to the people in the film, but I thought for a long time and worked multiple ways, how much footage would I show of the horrific events? We could have put together 10 hours of horrible images, but it wouldn't motivate people and nobody would watch it. So, in an effort to be responsible and impact politically, socially, and get people to want to do something, I was shocked when I started seeing on Instagram these demonstrations all over the world. I had no idea the level of passion, the size and scope, multiple countries. And that's when it occurred to me, well, this is the ending. It's a way without being simplistic, without excusing, without justifying, but saying, yes, action is happening. And you, everyone who sees the film, everyone who signs up for a free link and shows it, can also take action. And I felt it was both authentic and important to let people know what you said when they said attacked you. You are not alone here. And we need more and more of you. And, the other question that always comes up is, yeah, but, we need to convince this senator or that House member. Yes, but remember, peace movement, labor movement, women's movement, none of them waited around for an elected official. They created social justice by acting, and that's what I hope we will be able to help with this film to move people. There's a wonderful book I just finished called One Day Everyone Will Have Been Against This. And I think it's one of the great titles. And it's so true because just like with the Iraq War, we'll look back at, oh, no, I was always against it. Well, I didn't want to be one of those people that didn't do anything. And we're finding more and more people around the country who feel similarly.
Right. I supported Muhammad Ali when you hated him. So the same principle. And yeah, I've seen that title. I haven't read the book. I'll read it.
Oh, it's great.
So I know people are going to want to see the film. I want people to see the film. What do you recommend in terms of, I know it's probably not coming to Lowe's or whatever near you anytime soon. So what do you recommend for getting to see it?
Well, what we've done with this film, that's with the others, and we've developed and gotten better over the years at essentially a distribution system that makes the film available for free. So you can go to our website, bravenewfilms.org. You can sign up there, have a screening, and you will get a copy. You can go to any one of the social media platforms, sign up there, go to Blue Sky, follow me. There'll be clicks and links and possibilities. So there's the full film, which is 40 minutes. And then each section of the film is available separately in case somebody wants, for example, the woman who we follow, Heba, is a very powerful story. 13, 15 women journalists have been murdered. There may be people who want just that section. And then it gets shorter and shorter down to 30 seconds a minute on TikTok. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of those places have clips or pieces or the full film at the website, and it's free thanks to our donors and sponsors, not sponsors, funders, the ones who stayed with us. We have lost some, but There are others who've stayed and allow this continue. There's a toolkit which allows you to explain and talk and have a conversation, have a debate. We are working still very hard to get some screenings in synagogues with a debate going on, and I believe that will happen sooner than later. Colleges, mosques, journalist schools, all of them are possibilities.
Well, I can only say to you that I think we've been honored by the opportunity to help in any way we can this moral issue of our time. And whatever hits you've taken or any of us have taken, I think are a reflection of that honor. And so I thank you for making it. And again, my guest, Robert Greenwald, a founder of Brave New Films, which can be found at bravenewfilms.org, and director. His most recent film is Gaza, Journalists Under Fire. Did I get that right? I'm going off memory.
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
And so thank you for making it, Robert, and thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. We don't have paid ads, so people like you and others can help us spread the word. And I hope folks in the audience will take the opportunity to be able to do something other than hide their heads or throw a shoe at the television set.